Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz saxophonist, band leader, composer, and educator Dave Wilson. His new 2021 CD is called Stretching Supreme, and he goes into detail on his affinity and enjoyment of John Coltrane. He was born and raised in Bronxville, New York, and since the early 1980s, he's been in the central Pennsylvania, Delaware Valley area. For over 20 years prior to COVID, he had a very active performance schedule, logging an average of 120 to 150 dates a year, with almost all jazz-oriented ensembles at concerts, festivals, club dates, and private engagements. He is a very busy cat with a wonderful story. Enjoy.
All right. Hey, Dave, thanks for taking a minute out for me on Jazz, man. I appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I appreciate being able to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I got to tell you, before we get into Coltrane here, I always remember this one quote that I got from Brian Haas of the Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey. At one point in the interview, he said, you know, I'm not a real religious guy, but I listen to John Coltrane every Sunday. And I've never been able to shake that quote because there's so many people in the world of jazz that, you know, really do revere him as though he is a deity. And the thing about Coltrane was he was an enormously spiritual figure.
Yeah.
So let you know, and speaking of spirituality and healing and all of that, you know, we're on a very peculiar time on planet Earth since March of 2020, essentially. So I would think if anything, people need Coltrane and jazz and some healing music. So this album must feel good to get out into the world.
Yes, it does. And to be quite frank, the content, the album, the music kind of crept up on me in a way, because, you know, I had some other projects going, but I loved this night, the way the music turned out. You know, it was a great band, and sometimes I like to think on these live engagements, gigs, the magic stuff happens. But tell you a quick story, I was in High Point, North Carolina, back in 2015, I think it was 2016, and I came across that's where Coltrane was not born, but he spent a good time of his formative years before he moved to Philly. I came upon a statue of Coltrane that the city had erected for him, and then down the road there was two streets named after him. And I could feel that the vibe, you know, going all the way through me. And I was going down this Coltrane place or whatever it was called. I can send you some pictures. And so I shouted over to this guy who was, I rolled down the window, and I thought that the street was where he lived, you know, maybe not. But I asked this guy mowing his yard, do you know where John Coltrane lived? Did he live on this street? And he said to me, who? I thought that was Coltrane was just a big influence on my playing. I was a clarinet player in the band, really all the way through high school. But I started listening to jazz when I was about 14 or 15, and the first record I got was John Coltrane live at the Village Vanguard. And it just got me, it was a gateway into me playing the saxophone, playing jazz, and I've just listened to a lot of him just growing up, and there's just something going on with his tone and his approach. So much music has come out of Coltrane, you know, subsequent music styles, but just his sound and his approach is very spiritual. It's very lyrical, you know, the tone, and it's never just the notes, but and for me, you know, that tone is it's his attitude, it's what he's hearing, and it's his equipment, you know. It's This Selmer, largely super balanced action tenor from back in the 50s. And it's this auto-link mouthpiece, and it's him playing up in the high register. But there's just this beauty singing quality, and, so sometimes I try not to listen to him too much. There's that thing. But, just going back to these songs, something clicked on the ones that you hear on the record.
Right on. Right on. Well, how do you approach covering someone that is that monumental as Coltrane?
I've done some transcriptions over the years. I don't necessarily try and copy or emulate that sound per se. It's sort of like an attitude, I think, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. Some expression and interaction with the other guys. Now, in the band, that night, I was joined by my good friend Kirk Reese, who's just an amazing piano player. We've known each other 30 years and very modest. I think I call him unsung, East Coast genius or something, and there's a lot of them around, or enough, that you don't hear about. But anyway, but also very fortunate to be joined by two members of the Dave Liebman group, Tony Marino on bass and Alex Ritz on the drums. And they were on my recording that I made with another member of the Dave Liebman group, Bobby Avey. 2016, There Was Never Zoho music. But, I've studied some, not a whole lot with Dave Liebman, who, of course, one of the great players in jazz history, still with us, obviously. But, I'm going to tell you the truth about these Coltrane. They all came back to back in the first set. We had this first set that night at Chris's Jazz Cafe in Philadelphia. And, this goes back to 2017. It's really 4 years ago. And that's another story, releasing it now and all that. Just some stuff happened. And, we did some other stuff in the second set, some other Coltrane tunes, just two or three others. And those weren't quite happening as much. So, I didn't want to release them as far as that goes. But these Love Supreme, Acknowledgement, Love Supreme, Resolution, and then Dear Lord, which is a Coltrane classic I have just personally felt very close to. We all did those back to back, and then Naina, that came at the end of the set. And like I said, I've been sitting on this stuff, these tunes. I wanted to get them out. The more I listened to them, the more I dug what I was hearing. I had this other record in 2019. I didn't necessarily want to crowd it. And then I took some time getting this out, one reason or another. There was just some interplay on the tunes that you hear that I thought was pretty special, I like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're from Bronxville, New York.
Yeah.
How did all this begin for you? You mentioned Coltrane being kind of a gateway, but how did all of this culminate to where you are now as a jazz musician?
Well, I've been in central Pennsylvania since 1983, and very fortunate to be here. I met my wife, was from Lancaster in the mid-'80s. I went back to school. There was a part of my life I wasn't really playing a lot. Really learned how to play out here, and very fortunate because there's a very vibrant jazz scene in central Pennsylvania. I live in Lancaster. I'll play some in Philadelphia, Washington, Baltimore. I played up in New York. had a CD release at a place called The Garage down the road from the Village Vanguard. I play a lot of jobs, gigs, different styles, and I love to play out, you know. Of course, the pandemic has really, you know, put a damper on things. For quite a while, I was playing 140, 150 jobs a year, club dates, retirement communities, big band, and my own stuff. Now, when I make a recording, when I play this kind of engagement, what you're hearing is me, you know. And one thing I don't quite do right now, I don't play a lot of rock, you know. Been in rock bands way back, but you know, I play jazz. I don't play in these horn bands. One thing I do out here, I play a lot of New Orleans early jazz music. You know, we stopped using the word Dixieland some time ago, but where I play some clarinet on it, and you know, it's all good. It all swings. I do a lot of, or a fair number of concerts, you know, festivals. Keep pushing it ahead where I get a chance to play my own stuff with some great people. You know, I practice a fair amount, try and stay in shape and keep the wind going, keep my fingers moving. And here we are today, you know.
Beautiful. What was the first live jazz show that you saw that really made you think, man, that's exactly where I want to be?
That's an interesting question. I maybe could give you a couple, but my brother and I, we were out west when I graduated from high school back in the 70s. We were out west taking a trip that summer, and just finished hiking the Pacific Crest Trail from Oregon, from Washington to Oregon to Washington, up north. And so we went down to visit my uncle, Dick Wilson, in Santa Monica, and he was like a movie director back in the 50s, did Al Capone, Three in the Attic. Anyway, we were at Disneyland. I was walking through Disneyland, came across this sign, and it said, "One night only, Woody Herman Orchestra." And looking back, that flipped me out, you know. Seeing these guys, there was great tenor players, Frank Tiberi, the late Greg Herbert, I think his name was. There was a young trumpet player right out of the Army, Dave Stahl, who was from Reading, Pennsylvania. I ended up playing in his big band and shared that story with him. But, you know, that really, that was an inspiration. And then I think it was 76, I was at the Village Vanguard, and I saw Dexter Gordon. That was a very memorable concert. Went to the Vanguard quite a bit in the 70s, saw a lot of great groups. But that's one that really sticks in my mind, and got a little story about that. You know, they were on a break, and down the steps of the Vanguard walks Ornette Coleman, and he was wearing a pinstripe suit, and it was covered with soot, you know. And there was all these jazz guys at the Vanguard seeing Dexter Gordon. It was his triumphant return to the United States. He was living in Europe and all that. I think Kirk Lightsey was playing piano, Alex Blake on bass. But anyway, these guys, they all walked by Ornette Coleman, and they wouldn't talk to him. And he was looking very forlorn. Dexter Gordon walked right by him. Of course, they knew who he was. But, yeah, a lot of concerts I saw at the Vanguard and other places really formed a foundation. Like Roland Kirk, Keith Jarrett. One night at the Tin Palace, I saw a George Coleman octet, saw Sun Ra at the old 5 spot, Sam Rivers at his loft. And I think cumulatively that laid a foundation. I had the fortune to study with a great tenor player from Philly, Bill Barron, Wesleyan University, Connecticut, in the mid-'70s, later '70s. That's Kenny Barron's older brother, who's deceased. And, I guess that was the first time that I really, and some others there, saw, what these jazz guys were all about. But it kind of, there was something about just playing the saxophone and playing these gigs, playing the jazz gigs, and playing out, 2, 3, 4 times a week. I just loved doing it, and just loved creating and improvising. And I think if you ask almost any jazz musician, they'll say the same thing. Or musician, Yeah. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of living.
Well, and things have worked out pretty well for you. I mean, you played with some pretty big hitters like Wynton Marsalis, Tom Harrell, Lou Soloff, lots of people. And I'm curious, as an educator, what did you learn from these big musicians, these legends, luminaries, that you in turn have taken and taught younger players that you're around?
It's preparation and the love for the music, and what it takes. When you see people like that or get a chance to play with them, and some of that was with this one big band I was playing with, to be truthful, when they had some great guest artists. There's almost like a kind of an aura, a calmness, and a style, to their music. I remember I was playing with this big band, Dave Stahl and Steve Smith from Journey. He came in with his group Vital Information, but we played a Channel 1 suite from Buddy Rich with Steve, and it was like being on a different planet, It was like he was kind of floating along, taking everything super fast, and we were trying to keep up with him. But it maybe it rubs off on you. I am who I am. I'm very fortunate that I make some what I think are some good recordings, whether it's in the studio or some live things. And you just you go out there, you just want to try and make it happen.
So you've been at this for a while. You clearly love it, in different capacities as a recording artist, live performer, educator. What do you love the most about this process of being involved in jazz? What makes you the most excited when you wake up every day?
That's an interesting question, because like a lot of us, in particular with jazz, say this thing. It's been like a weekly thing since jazz. Playing the gigs and recording projects, this, that, the other thing. It's just late '80s, so that's over 35 years, and I was in rock bands before that. And it's there's the idea of getting ready for the gigs you're doing, this week. But at the same time, like honing your craft. I love to practice. I'd like to practice more. I try and get these days like at least 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. And it was interesting with the pandemic, everything kind of shut down. And so I was really doing all this practice, like 4 hours. And, got back into transcribing stuff. And you feel as if you're continuing to develop yourself as an artist. I want to keep it going till my hands fall off or something. So.
Beautiful. So let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger self right around the time you were becoming a professional musician, starting your jazz journey. And based on the wisdom that you got over all these years, and this isn't really a regret question, it's more of based on the wisdom that you've accumulated, what would be one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Stay in a little better physical condition. My younger self, practice more in the better, correct, whatever manner of practice. There's different ways you can develop. Maybe go to a few more jam sessions. But I'm sort of like in some ways a late bloomer, because jazz education back then for me, I didn't really think, to be really truthful, about making this as a career until I was in my mid-20s, and because I was in bands, and when I was in college the first time, well, gosh, I was like a philosophy major, and some of that's just kind of, where I was at, my upbringing, and that's life. It's cool, I'm where I am because the accumulation of my experiences is a very common theme, right? So many of the great players, well, they started like heavy focus or routine or whatever you'd have it in their teens. And of course, so many of these young people, well, band programs are suffering, but it's like athletics. You got a cream of the crop who are just like super gifted, in so many ways. But I would have gotten, say, more serious in my teens. That's the way it is. It's all good. I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate, and I've had a lot of support, really, from my parents, from my wife. Lisa has been very supportive. Things have to come together. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky where I am, and what's happened. So.
You mentioned playing a lot of live shows, and now that the world's kind of waking up a little bit, I mean, there are more live shows are happening, things are opening up. What do you hope we all realize about the power of live music that we've been away from for so long, both musician and the audience, when we do actually return more and more to the live environment?
I don't want people just to slip into seeing live music on a tiny screen, or there's so many musics around, as we all know, so many niches, and you got to be true to yourself. I'd like to see people approach live music, having the courage to get out of their houses and go see live music again. Of course, the pandemic, you can't blame people in a lot of respects. We've been very careful. People, as far as jazz goes, just went to a great concert Saturday night. I was off up in Harrisburg, sponsored by this great musical organization, the Central Pennsylvania Friends of Jazz. I used to be on the board. But they brought in Ted Rosenthal trio, amazing pianist. Tim Horner was on drums. And they did like a holiday concert. But there's something about live music that you don't see on the screen, on these streams. And I've seen a lot. I mean, I saw some really good streams. I was part of streams. But you feel close to it. You appreciate the artistry, and there's that connection, and with the audience and the performer. And look, we've all played all our club dates, private engagements. There's always going to be an audience out there. Are they paying attention? I won't hold that against them. But, let's just hope live music does come all the way back. And I've been fortunate since this past April. I've been playing a lot of relatively good amount of gigs, engagements, concerts, but a lot of stuff hasn't come back. And hey, I just wish everybody would go out and get vaccinated. Why some people don't want to, I can't understand it.
Amen. I get it. It just defies logic. So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are?
Okay, well, you're getting me thinking here. I'd like people to look at me as somebody who is, as far as music, is genuine. Whatever I'm playing, the essence comes out, Dave Wilson. And, there's kind of kind, giving. A lot of what I've done is, music-wise, it's been as a leader, like that 2, 3, 4 times a week. And I try to be fair to the people I'm working with. I don't gouge them over the money, and I try and give something of myself to the audience, musically. Otherwise, I try and hold up a standard of integrity, in what I do. That's probably might answer that question.
I like it. That was my final one, and I really appreciate you, Dave, for taking a minute out. Good luck with the album and the return to the stage, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Joe, for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Dave for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.